All right, welcome to the Explainer. So today we're diving into an argument that says the real revolution with Bitcoin, it's got nothing to do with its price. It's actually about something way more fundamental, completely changing how we move value itself.
Okay, let's really get into this quote. The source we're looking at here, it frames Bitcoin as something much bigger than just an asset. They're talking about it as a brand new kind of protocol, something with an impact that could be just as massive as what the internet did for information. So we're not just talking about some new feature here. This is potentially a complete rewiring of our entire digital world.
So look, the source is upfront about this. Bitcoin's performance as an asset, that's old news. I mean, the numbers pretty much speak for themselves, right? But the real argument here is that if you're only focused on that return on investment, you're missing the forest for the trees. You're missing the real story, the much bigger, more transformative one that's playing out.
All right, the limits of payments. So to really get what that big story is, we have to start by looking at the system we all use every single day. The source we're digging into calls it the payment paradigm. And yeah, that's the world we know, the one built on traditional government-issued money.
Okay, so this is a really crucial point. When you pay for something online, let's say with your card or an app, you're not actually moving money. Not directly anyway. What you're really doing is sending an instruction through this long, complicated chain of companies to go settle a debt for you. It's basically a request, not the action itself. A big difference.
And this right here is the heart of the problem. That whole chain of middlemen, well, each one adds cost, adds friction, and adds restrictions. You might think about super modern apps, like Uber or Spotify. They feel so smooth and seamless. But underneath it all, they're still running on these old, clunky payment rails. And every single middleman in that chain is taking a cut and creating another spot where things could go wrong.
Okay, next up, the freedom of value transfer. So let's shift gears and look at the new paradigm this source is proposing. This is what they call the world of value transfer. It sounds similar, but trust me, it's a subtle yet incredibly powerful distinction.
The best way to think about it, as the source points out, is to imagine handing someone physical cash. That's a direct action, right? It's not an instruction. You don't need to ask for anyone's permission, and it doesn't have to be some formal transaction either. It could just be a tip, or giving your kid their allowance, or a gift. It's just value moved whenever you want for whatever reason.
And this comparison really just nails the fundamental difference, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got a system that's all about asking for permission, sending a request through this maze of gatekeepers. But on the other hand, you have the direct peer-to-peer act of just moving value. It's a lot more like how information moves around on the internet, freely and without a middleman.
So now, why the source says Bitcoin? This brings us to the big question, right? If this idea of value transfer is so powerful, why is Bitcoin supposedly the key, the necessary tool to make this whole shift happen on a global scale?
Now you might be thinking, hang on, what about all the fintech apps and stablecoins we have now? The source gets right into that. It acknowledges that, yeah, things like stablecoins, those digital tokens pegged to the US dollar, they absolutely exist, but, and this is a big but, the argument is that they're still fundamentally tied to the old system.
Yeah, it's a pretty blunt way to put it. But the point they're making is this. Because those solutions are built on top of the old financial plumbing, they inherit all of its problems. You still need a bank account. Your transactions can still be censored or frozen by some company in the middle. And they just don't have that true open programmability that you'd get from a native internet protocol.
But Bitcoin, on the other hand, is totally different. The source argues that its core design, the fact that it's a neutral, open, and decentralized protocol, that's the very thing that makes this permissionless value transfer possible. It's designed to work for anyone, anywhere, anytime. It's not owned by a company or tied to a specific country's rules.
All right, Section 4, value transfer in every app. So what does all this look like in the real world? What's the practical application? Well, the source uses a really powerful analogy to explain it, the evolution of the digital camera.
Seriously, think about it. The camera started out as its own clunky device, right? Then it became a feature on a flip phone. But the real game changer, the revolution, wasn't just the camera getting smaller. It was when Apple dropped the iPhone and gave developers an easy way to build that camera into any app they wanted. And that's what gave us totally new things we couldn't have imagined, from Instagram to Pokemon Go.
And so the claim here is that Bitcoin does the exact same thing, but for value. It basically turns value transfer into a simple, standardized building block, just like that camera API. The idea is that any developer, anywhere, can just plug the ability to send and receive value right into their app. It could be a messaging app, a social network, a new marketplace, you name it.
and they can do it without needing millions of dollars in funding or having to navigate the complicated walled gardens of the traditional finance world.
So, a world remade. This idea, this convergence of direct value transfer in apps. According to the source, it's not just about creating a few new cool products. It's pointing to a really fundamental change in how our entire digital world operates.
And really, this is the ultimate takeaway. The argument is that when value can move as freely as information, things like geographic borders start to matter a whole lot less, at least when it comes to economics. It allows value to just flow freely, directly from person to person, and that has the potential to change how global interactions and commerce work at a really, really basic level.
So the source leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. It's framing this whole shift not just as some small improvement, but as a truly pivotal moment in history. You know, like the dawn of the internet itself. The creation of a tool so fundamental that one day future generations might look back and honestly wonder, how did we ever get by without it?